So I'm feeling kind of a Red Wings mood today. And with yesterday's amazing victory over the Chicago Blackhawks, this gives us an opportunity to dive into the Wings and some of the latest trade rumors and updates, because wowzers did we see Elliotte Friedman go out there and drop another bomb on the hockey world yesterday. It's all courtesy of 32 Thoughts, the podcast. We're going to leave a link in the description, of course, to the show. And link is also going to be in the description to ExpressVPN, as well as a Red Wings Insider article. ExpressVPN can help you out if you have any VPN needs, and if you use my affiliate link, you could go out there and get some free months, so why not go out there and try it yourself? But because this was talked about yesterday, and because the Wings had a little bit of an early game, it's early here in Vancouver, 4 p.m. PST, I didn't want to talk about this just yet, but now we have ourselves an opportunity on the Wings' day off to get into this here, as it pertains to Detroit and the Buffalo Sabres. Because on yesterday's 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliotte says once more that the Red Wings were in on, and still may be in on, Buffalo Sabres forward Dylan Cozens. It hasn't gone anywhere, but Buffalo staff has been following the Red Wings around. This tweet, of course, is from the guys over at the Grindline Show, so big shout out over to them. But we're also going to leave a link in the description to this article on Red Wings Insider. Top Hockey Insider confirms Red Wings' interest in top player from the Buffalo Sabres. Last time we had spoken about the idea of Dylan Cozens and the Red Wings, it was from a very different podcast. It wasn't 32 Thoughts with Elliotte Friedman. It was actually the After the Whistle podcast, which featured former NHLers Craig Brevet and Andrew Peters, both guys who had played for the Buffalo Sabres and who are, doing the podcast with a Buffalo point of view. So with Buffalo guys going out there and saying that, hey, the Wings are apparently interested in this dude, and then Elliotte Friedman going out there and writing about, hey, the Red Wings are interested in this dude. Furthermore, you had Friedman on the podcast yesterday saying, hey, the Red Wings are interested in this dude. I think there's reason to believe that the Red Wings might be interested in this dude, even though it's been very established over the years that Steve Yzerman and his crew, they're usually really tight on whatever roster decisions or roster conversations could be happening. Oh yeah, whomever it is the Wings are interested in, you're never gonna know because the Red Wings like to keep things on lock. Well, it's a little different, I guess, when it's the Buffalo guys going out there and giving the updates instead. But anyways, if we go over into this Red Wings Insider article, it dives into some of the actual comments from Elliotte Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast yesterday. Right before the NHL trade freeze in December, Jason Karmanos, who's the associate GM of the Buffalo Sabres, was in Detroit, and that was unusual. People started wondering what exactly was going on. And he's been there a couple more times since, like he was there again. But finally, it got coughed up to me that they believe that the Red Wings were looking at Dylan Cozens, and it fits. I think there's a lot of people looking at Cozens. I will say this. There was a time that a couple of people said to me they thought it was close. Now, I don't know where it stands. I don't know where it's going to go. Everyone is looking for right-handed center, so at the very least, I'm sure Buffalo's had even more of a stretch of people calling them and saying, what exactly are you thinking here? And what are we looking at? And so with this in mind, Elliotte Friedman doubles down and even goes so far to say that some people told him that they thought it was close. Whether or not close means a trade was actually close to happening, or that the conversations about the trade were close to getting serious, that remains to be seen. It's all semantics at the end of the day. But still, thinking about the idea of Dylan Cozens being a prime target for the Detroit Red Wings is interesting when you consider his progression, what he has done so far, and the type of player that he is. Dylan Cozens is a very hard-working, versatile two-way center who's been on the decline point production-wise, but who has slowly started to get back up there over the past few weeks or so since the end of December. He certainly is not on pace for the same 68-point season that he had a few years ago, but he is still in the territory of growing and becoming better and just becoming more of a pro. He's only 23, but as a big right-handed center, of course, there is a certain profile that he brings. And when you think about the guys the Wings have, the guys that the Wings have drafted as of late, Michael Brandsteg-Newgard, Nate Danielson, Marco Kasper, these are the kinds of guys that Steve Yzerman wants to build his team with. Versatile two-way centers who are reliable defensively and who do some pretty good work when they don't have the puck. They're very hardworking, they skate hard, they don't slack off, they don't laze around. While Dylan Cozens' work ethic has always been one of his strong suits, there has been reason to doubt whether or not his top-tier point production that he had in the WHL would carry over into the National Hockey League 100%. We saw flashes of that 2 seasons ago, but nowadays, we're slowly hoping that Cozens is able to get back up to that 60, 70, maybe even 80-point form that he had displayed 2 years ago. Ultimately, though, for Cozens in Detroit, he would be a very fine second-line center behind Dylan Larkin, and honestly, when you think about, center strength, while I don't necessarily think Dylan Cozens is projecting to being a number one bona fide 90-point guy every year consistently, having him and Larkin as a potential 1A, 1B swapping around situation with a guy like Kasper on the wing, for example, that does sound like a really nice combo. But the question is, what would the Buffalo Sabres want in exchange? The Buffalo Sabres are last place in the entire Eastern Conference. They are one of the worst teams in the league. With all the conversations about them potentially trading away a defenseman, you've got too many top-tier left-handed guys in Byram, Dahlin, and Power. You could probably disregard any sort of left-handed D-man prospect or whatever going over in a Cozens trade. So no Edvinsson, no Albert Johansson, although I'm not too sure Red Wings fans would have wanted to give up either of those guys anyway. But if you had to twist my arm, if you had to force a trade, I do think that using whatever forward center prospects the Red Wings have at their disposal right now and trying to fast forward into the future with a trade like this would make sense. If you're saying, okay, the Wings are just outside the playoff race looking in, they're 2, 3, 4 points out of being in a definitive spot. If you wanted to trade away, let's say, a Nate Danielson and maybe a draft pick, you trade away a roster player that's not all too great for a guy like Dylan Cozens, who is a roster player, who is young, who does have a high ceiling. If you wanted to make that sort of a move, because if you think about Nate Danielson, for example, if he becomes a guy who is like Cozens in the future, you're probably happy with that, right? It's just Cozens has had a 68-point season at the age of 21 years old already, and that's certainly something that adds a feather to his cap in comparison to what a Danielson brings, for example. Not saying that Danielson can't become that, but if he does become that, then you're probably happy. So, do you pay a price to fast forward in time for what you have right now? That's the question, because if you think the Wings are on the outside looking in and they could use an extra piece like that to fully get over the hump, then maybe Cozens is that guy. He's locked on, he's signed till 2030, making $7.1 million, but that's also a conversation you have to talk about here too, because it's like, he's making 7.1, but he's declining in points. Do you believe in him to bounce back and show more value than a $7.1 million contract would provide? Or if he stagnates around this point production level, that dollar amount could start to look pretty ugly by the time he's 25 or 26 or 27. There's a lot of time, after all, between now and 2030. So for Dylan Cozens, obviously, we can have the conversation all day as to whether or not the Wings would be better or worse or whatever getting him. I do think that he fits the style that Todd McLellan likes to play and that Stevie Y wants for his team. And it gets even more interesting when you acknowledge that Elliotte Friedman said that, yeah, people have told him that they thought this Cozens whatever Detroit thing was close. So, links are going to be down in the description below to the 32 Thoughts podcast, to the article that we had read on Red Wings Insider for the quotes, as well as to ExpressVPN. So go out there and check them out. Use the affiliate link down in the description. But I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you feel about these Dylan Cozens trade updates and how Elliotte Friedman goes out there and doubles down even more on the Red Wings. There could be other teams that are involved here. He says so as much. We had talked about the idea of Vancouver multiple times, potentially targeting Dylan Cozens. WHL guy, Western Canadian guy, or not Western Canadian guy, Northwestern Canadian guy. Yeah, he's from the Yukon. So obviously there is a different kind of origin story for this player compared to most other WHL athletes. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Dylan Cozens and the Detroit Red Wings. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.